review. Book one, it's all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy is the autistic hypnotist, none other than Mr. Lawrence Bartley.
Thank you very much for having me, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Lawrence. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. So, my story, real quickly, is that, as you can probably tell from the title, The Autistic Hypnotist, I am a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, if you prefer. And my specialty is working with people who have autism because I myself am on the autistic spectrum. I have Asperger's syndrome. I got diagnosed when I was about 10 years old. And it came with some challenges, especially the sensory issues, speaking with people. That's how I got interested in hypnosis, was because I had difficulty with communication. So to learn more about communication skills, I started learning about persuasion and influence, and eventually influence in the unconscious mind, which got me interested in hypnosis, hypnotherapy. Eventually, I went to a hypnosis training to learn persuasion skills, but not because I had any intention of becoming a hypnotherapist. I just thought it'd be a great skill to have no matter what I did with my life. But at that training, I worked with somebody to overcome my own problems, my own traumas. I had anxiety, I had depression. Was pretty. I call the years the dark years for a reason. So I was working with somebody, and after working with them, all my problems just disappeared. I kept going back to other hypnosis trainings and eventually decided that this is what I want to do with my life. I want to help people who were in the same place I am, autistic people with anxiety, with depression, with all these sort of repressed emotions and all these horrible feelings, and to help them overcome those problems, to help them become the best version of themselves.
The best version of themselves. And thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you,
You're very
thank
welcome.
thank you. And today, let's talk about your traumas, where you'll never know all the things you're missing out on. So tell us, trauma does not just create pain we feel, but life we can't feel. Can you explain what you mean by things we're missing out on? There's no invincible to us.
Yeah, so to explain that, I really have to tell two stories. So the first story was that years ago at one of the hypnosis trainings, the trainer told me that when he was growing up, his father was basically a master of psychological torture and getting him to behave. That anytime he would misbehave, his father would go, that kind of behavior is well, you'll never know all the things you're missing out on. And you go, like going to the zoo? It's like, well, we could have gone, but now we won't because of the way you're behaving. And he'd be a good boy for about a month after that. Uh, a while after that, and this is the second story, I was watching a bunch of YouTube short videos, and I came across a man called Scott Adams who was promoting his book, Reframe Your Brain, which I have right here. Brilliant book. However, there was one reframe in it that I didn't like, because in his book, he offers the reframe that your trauma is not your problem. Your trauma is why I will kick your ass. That you think you know pain. I know more pain than you. I can endure more. I can go further than you can because I've had all this trauma. Well, I didn't like that because in my experience, like I've had anxiety, I've had depression. I found it very limiting. So I don't really like the idea of accepting trauma. I rather just completely get rid of it. So while I was watching that video, the first story about this is why you'll never know all the things you're missing out on came to mind. And that is where the idea your trauma is why you'll never know all the things you're missing out on. Because from my own personal experience, I had social anxiety, which got in the way of making friends. I had anxiety when I was in college, which logically doesn't really make sense because college is it's a safe place. The lecturers were wonderful. The people there were very nice. But I still had anxiety. I couldn't feel comfortable or confident. So that's why one of the reasons why I don't really like people accepting their trauma because I think that we all have the ability to overcome it and just to be way more confident, to be way more safer, to just go to just a higher level. I think there's a lot of potential in human beings that we're not unlocking because we have all these traumas, fears, phobias, insecurities, a whole bunch of emotions that we've been repressing within ourselves. And I think we all have the ability to at least to get rid of all those repressed emotions to become, like I said earlier, the best version of ourselves.
And how does trauma not only limit our choices, but more insidiously limit our very imagination and desire for what we could be possible, Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, trauma. It really does affect the imagination. There are some people who believe that something like anxiety is all the fears of the what ifs and the futures. So if I do such a thing, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I find it very limiting in the imagine because of all the things that they're imagining. So, in my own personal experience, like I was terrified of like making friends because well, what if I said something stupid? What if I embarrass myself? What if they get mad at me? What if I get in trouble? But in reality, it's really all inside our own heads because most people are nice. Most people are not going to get mad at you, and honestly, most people don't really care if you embarrass yourself. So, does that explain the
Definitely.
question, or does that answer the
Yes,
question? Yeah.
indeed. Yes, indeed, Mr. Lawrence. In what ways do the brilliant based adaptations we develop in response to trauma later become a cage that prevents us from seeing the door is now open?
Okay, well, I just want to say that I love how I know it's a survival-based adaptation because one of the things about anxiety, so people always act like it's a horrible thing, which it is a horrible thing. But anxiety, it's a perfectly natural response to have if you're living in a war zone. Anxiety is designed to keep you safe, to, like you said, to help people survive. However, when the war is over, anxiety is not so useful anymore because anxiety keeps you in a state of thinking that there's danger everywhere, even if logically you know that you're safe. So I think it's because people spend so much time in anxiety in that danger mode that it sort of becomes permanent, becomes wired in, or that or perhaps it's just that they really don't understand how to get themselves out of that danger mode, back into feeling safe, back into feeling secure, back into feeling even stable. I've worked with a lot of people because of their anxiety, they didn't even feel that they're stable and that they can't imagine being stable, let alone feeling confident or feeling like I can do this, like I got dragon energy, or feeling awesome. So I think it's because they spend so much time in that anxiety mode that they forget that it's a survival based adaptation, but they don't need it anymore once you're out of that survival situation.
Mr. Lawrence, let's talk about the nervous systems as a filter. How does a traumatized nervous system constantly scanning for danger actively filter out opportunities for joy, connection, and expansion before we're even consciously aware of them?
Uh, yeah, so the nervous system filters out all of those wonderful expansion and opportunities for joy because it is primed to look for danger. When it's holding in a whole bunch of trauma, is just looking for a whole bunch of danger. Some people have probably heard the thinker thinks and the prover proves. Well, if the anxiety is causing you to think about anxiety, to think you're not safe, there's a part of your mind called the prover who's going to look constantly for opportunities to prove that you're right, to prove that you're in danger, to prove that there is something to be worried about. So it's because there as of the focus on all the danger and constantly having to be aware of it to make sure that you're not disliked, make sure that you're not going to get harmed. Then that people with anxiety like myself, when I had it, would forget to notice all of the wonderful opportunities. These opportunities like making friends, like feeling safe, like maybe taking a risk that actually isn't that risky. For example, starting this business, for example, like the hypnotherapy business, a little bit risky, but because I have to put myself out into the public. But in reality, not much real risk. Because I mean, what's the worst that could go wrong? I embarrass myself a little bit, and even if I do embarrass myself, it's not really going to affect me 2, 3 hours from now. Like later tonight, I'm going to be sleeping in my bed, and I'm not really going to care that I embarrassed myself.
Definitely. And how does the trauma forces us to abandon parts of ourselves, like our uh, playfulness, our assertiveness, and how does absence of those traits shape life we don't even realize is smaller?
Yeah, well, assertiveness definitely. I mean, I was working with a client, and uh, now normally I do work that's content-free hypnosis, which means we don't really go into childhood or go into like the really personal, dark stuff. But after I do a hypnosis session with somebody, they have a choice of telling me about that. And this client, in this particular instance, told me that once he came out of the hypnosis, he realized that his trauma it came from an experience when he was 3 years old. That he went to the beach with his parents, but then both his parents went back to their car to get something out of it, and he was left completely alone. And his 3-year-old brain could not understand why his parents were walking away from him. He thought he'd been abandoned. So it's that feeling of abandonment that the brain goes, I'm never going to experience this again. So in an attempt to never experience it again, he ended up becoming one of these. He lost his assertiveness because anything that would be assertive risks you being disliked, risks you being abandoned, and he was terrified of being abandoned. But once he realized that his parents just needed to get something from the car and that they would be back in a moment, when he looked at it from the adult filter, looked back at his past in the hypnosis session, then he could bring all his adult learnings, his adult experiences back into that old feeling and was able to switch off, and the trauma was able to be processed and released, and he ended up overcoming that trauma and getting his assertiveness back.
Mr. Lawrence, many
Yeah.
people think if I just achieve, I'll be happy, not realizing trauma has walled off their capacity for true fulfillment. How does this goal pose moving dynamic keep us trapped?
Yeah, well, as you're asking this question, I remember one person I worked with who was a multimillionaire, very rich, very successful, on paper, but also very miserable, not on paper, because outside his business, he felt a sense of worthlessness. That's what he drove him to keep making all this money. Was that he wouldn't feel worthwhile unless he has all this money. He wouldn't feel worthwhile unless he's continuously working on something. But the downside of that is he spends so much time at work making money. He was neglecting his wife. He had a wife. He had children. Ended up neglecting them, and well, that caused him to be miserable. His wife was constantly angry at him. because why wasn't he spending time with her? Why wasn't he spending time with his child? Like, if you want to take a very long view look at it, 20 years after he died, why do you think the child is going to remember of him? He's not going to remember him at all because he spent all his time working. And so that's one of the things that trauma really gets in the way of, because it causes you to focus down on this one narrow path. Trauma, it's kind of like walking through a forest and there's a dozen different paths in front of you. But because of trauma, this path gets cut off, this path gets cut off, this path gets cut off, and so your options are limited to just this one narrow path. And maybe it's a nice path, maybe it's comfortable, nice dirt path, but maybe it has thorns in it. And because of the trauma, you can't choose a different path that will be much nicer, much safer, much more comfortable, much more fulfilling, even.
Mr. Lawrence, as autistic hypnotist, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Short term and long term goals. Short term, I'm looking to grow an email list, so if any listeners want to sign up for that, I'll be very grateful. Also, I got a free sleeping for hypnosis for sleep recording for anybody who does want to sign up to my email list. As for long term goals, somebody once asked me the question 20 years after I die, what will people be saying about me? I realized that I wanted people to say about me is that I was somebody who used to live in a dark place with all my traumas and anxieties, overcame them, and helped other people to solve those same traumas, those same anxieties, to help them become the best versions of themselves. So my long term goals is simply to grow a hypnosis business where I can help as many people as possible, particularly the autistic people, because I was in therapy for several years and it did not work with me. And I know there's a lot of people in therapy, autistic, neurodivergent, neurotypical even, and the therapy is just, it's not working for them. I know a lot of people who were in therapy for several years, like I was, and I believe that hypnosis is a system that can help people, you know, to overcome so many different problems. Like, our brains have so much potential, so much capacity that we're not even using. There was a friend I had who started calling humans just infinite humans. I am infinite because of everything that we have that we're just haven't unlocked because of all this trauma. So long term goals is simply to grow an incredible business where I can help as many people as possible.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Lawrence, and looking forward
Thank
for
you.
that incredible business to come. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Uh, want to be like me in what specific way, if you don't mind me asking?
Hmm.
I want to be like me to be confident,
To be
I
an
suppose.
autistic hypnotist or to be an entrepreneur like you?
Well, to be an autistic hypnotist, you'd have to learn hypnosis first. That would be my first piece of advice. To be confident, to be an entrepreneur, well, the first, the most important thing is to process all of that trauma. Because a lot of people think that trauma will somehow be a superpower. I don't believe trauma is a superpower. I think that trauma is straight up crippling. So the first piece of advice is, if you have any trauma, any repressed emotions, any emotional backlog, anything that you've been bottling down your entire life, is to figure out how to let it go. Because there's a lot of people carrying all sorts of anxieties, fears, phobias, resentment, bitterness. Those are two really big ones that I'm seeing a lot of. A lot of people bottling down all sorts of resentment, and and they don't know how to how to let it go, how to get rid of it.
Let it go, let it go. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Lawrence. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
A book or books that influenced my journey. I have another one right beside me, which is because I would not be a decent hypnotist if I did not recommend My Voice Will Go With You by Sidney Rawson. It's the teaching tales of Milton H. Erickson, who was considered the grandfather of Ericksonian hypnotists or Ericksonian hypnotism, who was one of the greatest hypnotists who ever lived, widely considered to be the greatest of all time. So that book, very influential. It is a book full of many of his teaching tales, many stories that he told clients, because his entire method of hypnosis involved a lot of storytelling, a lot of teaching through stories. And it's a brilliant book, even if you're not a hypnotist, just for communication with other people's unconscious minds, just for thinking outside the box. And I'm sure even people who are not hypnotists would find some tales to be incredibly useful.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
So tell us, since trauma lives in the body, how can somatic practices help us access and unlock these amazing experiences and feelings that our minds have walled off?
Well, one of the ways to experience all the wonderful feelings that the mind just walled off reminds you of this theory. It's called Chesterton's fence. And Chesterton's fence means don't take down a fence until you know why it was put up. So, with all those feelings and emotions that people are not feeling because that people have decided not to feel because of all their traumas, one important thing is to realize, well, why did your brain decide to put up that wall, put up that fence to stop you from feeling those things in the first place? And in many cases, it is survival. Anxiety, for example, going back to that, is a solution. It's a solution to living in a war zone. Only it's a good solution in that war zone, not a good solution outside of the war zone. So to take down that wall, to take down that fence, and to feel all those things that people are missing out on, one has to realize, well, why did my mind decide to put up that wall in the first place?
Interesting perspective, Mr. Lawrence. And what is the most common misunderstanding people have about this concept? That is about regret, or is it too late that you can want to correct?
Uh, just out of curiosity, this concept, what concept is that?
The concept that we are talking about trauma.
That's too late to do what exactly? Too late to heal? Because it's never too late to heal. I mean, I had a client who was 70 years old.
Mhm.
Like, well, it's not too late for him. It still worked for him. He still healed. He felt much better. He did regret not doing it earlier. But like I said, my mentor, he had a saying that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So I don't think it's ever too late to start healing, to start, well, to start improving your life, to achieve that confidence that you wanted to have, to go and hit all those wonderful feelings that you've always wanted that the trauma held you back from. I don't think it's ever too late to do that. I do know there's some people who regret not doing it earlier. Uh, I suppose there's nothing else to do except to actually go see a hypnotist or a normal therapist or meditation or whatever modality you want to use to help get rid of a trauma. My preference is hypnosis because that's what worked for me, and that's why I'm a hypnotist.
Yes, it's not too late, people. It's not too late. So, Mr. Lawrence, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101 love letters in fourth season, and movie 101 review and music 101 fourth season as well, science 101 and sex 101 in second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Lawrence, for someone who feels the weight of this realization of life potentially lost, what is your message about possibility of reclaiming even a fraction of what was missed?
So to reclaim what was missed is is simply remove all the blockages, remove all the mental blockages, the repressed emotion, because that's the stuff that keeps people held back. That's the stuff that keeps people stuck where in their well, to keep them stuck wherever they are. I think this message simply is that you need to let go of all those dark feelings, all those repressed emotions that we've been holding on to. And that doesn't mean become a nice guy who lets other people trample on them. It means to reclaim the assertiveness, to reclaim the feelings of power. I remember I had a friend who used to tell me that he used to smoke a lot of cannabis, and he would always say the strangest things. That we are eagles amongst chickens. He used to yell that out loud. You know, strange. But we are eagles. We have power. We have incredible ability that we're not tapping into because we were all raised to believe that we were chickens, to believe that we were brainwashed into being less than what we can be. So, this message simply is to find out all those blockages and learn to let them go so you can become the authentic self you want to be, the stable self you want to become the powerful self you want to be, the confident self, whatever your ideal best version of yourself is. You can become that. In fact, I think it's the natural state of mind for people to be confident, to feel powerful. And that when all those stresses and traumas and anxieties get removed, that becoming powerful is the natural result of all that. A lot of people say that you need to learn this skill, you need to train yourself. It's not training, you need to reset to what you were before all those traumas came up. The removing of the traumas is the biggest part of the message because that's the biggest part of what's holding people back.
Mr. Lawrence Bartley, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Well, if you want to support me, you can follow me on X, which is at law_Bartley, LAW_BARTLEY. Or join my newsletter, which you can find at lawrencebartley.com, which is the website that you're showing. I call it the Labyrinth newsletter. And if you want to contact me, the best place to do so would be through the newsletter because I write daily emails. I check it every single day. That is the best place to contact me.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Lawrence Bartley because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Lawrence, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Modicon people, see you soon.